What about Darkman, I hear you say? Well, 35 years ago they hadn't figured out the formula yet for making good Liam Neeson movies, or good superhero movies, or movies where people don't start screaming at each other mid-conversation. So somebody came along and said, hey, why don't we put all of those things into a blender? And that's how Darkman was made. The movie starts with these two gangs meeting up for a broad daylight crime fight, and the other gang just sort of comes marching right out, and nothing says we mean business like your mate's brother playing with his nunchucks. Anyway, they disarm them of their brother's mate's nunchucks and bring them into the warehouse. So this guy is like, this is my turf. And then they start pulling each other's legs off and shooting each other with them. But they were ready for this, so they start driving cars really slowly around the inside of this warehouse. And then they start chopping this guy's fingers off, which is mildly inconvenienced by. Meanwhile, Liam Neeson is trying to perfect his liquid skin formula, because who hasn't fantasized about having fake rubber skin over their normal skin? But he just can't get the noses right. And his assistant is like, look, I've been meaning to ask you, who's actually going to buy a can of skin? You're thinking too small, Clint. Haven't you ever wanted to shed your skin like a lizard man? No, never. Well, picture this then. With our invention, you could walk into work like everything's normal, then just start tearing pieces of your face off during the 10 a.m. meeting. They'd have to let you go home. Anyway, Liam's at home with his girlfriend, and they're looking at old photos on a projector as they're too poor to afford a TV because nobody wants to buy a can of skin. And one of the photographs is of 46-year-old Liam Neeson pretending to be a 20-year-old. Next day, he asks his girlfriend to marry him, but she deflects, and he's like, it's my skin, isn't it? It's not nearly reptilian enough. Later on, the lights go off in Liam's lab, and they realise that light was making the liquid skin dissolve. So he's like, of course, the answer is so simple. If people want to use my liquid snake man skin, all they have to do is only creep around at night. But before they can celebrate, these goons wreck up the lab looking for some important document thing. They mentioned this earlier, but they weren't talking about artificial skin, so I didn't listen. And for some reason, this guy's still carrying the leg gun from earlier rather than a normal gun. But this guy's just thrilled to still be involved, I guess. Anyway, they beat the shit out of Liam, and then they trap him under some heavy cabinets, but then they pull him out like he was never trapped at all. Then they try to dunk his head in this hot ribena, but he grabs these exposed metal beams that were dangerously electrified and just sat out in the middle of the lab. Anyway, they blow him up, but he's fine. And at the funeral, this guy is like, I love digging holes and filling them in. And then she collapses, and then this guy runs over to help, but then he changes his mind. Anyway, some random scientist lady finds Liam's charred body washed up on a riverbank, and they're like, who is it? I don't know, let's do experiments on him. And this head scientist lady is like, here, look at this, we've made it so he can't feel any pain, he's super strong, and whenever he gets a little bit angry, he'll go absolutely fucking mental, and nobody will be able to do anything about it. Well, okay, but you've just kind of turned him into Frankenstein though, haven't you? Like, what's actually the point in any of this? Because I just felt like doing it. Anyway, he escapes, and they're like, how did he get out? We only gave him super strength. And then he gets himself a nice coat out of a bin, which I can relate to. Then, as luck would have it, he randomly runs into his girlfriend, but for some reason, she don't think he's attractive anymore. Afterwards, he tries to get some kip in this soggy alleyway, but then the scientist part of his brain is like, this would be better if I was inside. And he goes back to his old lab and salvages his TV because it's the 1980s and this thing would have cost more than a car. Anyway, he salvages some lab gear and he goes to live in this abandoned building because nobody would question a 6'6" Phantom of the Opera monster man pushing a trolley full of Bunsen burners around town. So he sets up shop in this old mill and he tries to rebuild his face, but the computer is like, nah, this bit here is missing. Well, can't you just copy the other side? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Then he gets back to his experiments, like mixing yellow with green. And then he discovers that he has the new power to be on fire. Anyway, this guy is like, get over your dead boyfriend. And meanwhile, Liam is surveilling his ex-girlfriend from this small vent, which is not at all creepy. And then he has a little vent cry. But then he spots one of the guys that killed him because he's like a zombie man or something now, I think. I really should have paid more attention to that scientist woman. Anyway, he manages to build a working 3D printer out of sardine cans and he makes himself some new hands. Then he turns himself into this fat guy to set him up and make the mob think he stole all this cash because Darkman is a crafty man. After that, he does some more stuff in his lab while he's waiting for his face to load. And he really misses his girlfriend, so he decides to ambush her at his grave, and instead of calmly explaining why he's not dead, he just sort of descends upon her like Dracula. So even though the liquid skin melts after 99 minutes, and he's used 60 getting there in traffic, he's like, oh yeah, we've time for a quick coffee. And she's like, I'm really glad you're alive. Anyway, he's a detective now, and he steals this guy's face and pulls a sideshow Bob to get him arrested for robbing this ciggy shop.
It's Durant. Robert G. Durant.
I believe him. So he poses as the mob boss at this drug deal, but he's not quite got the cigars down yet. But then the real drug lord shows up, and this is an honest to God scene in this film.
Not me, him! Shoot him! Shoot him!
Anyway, afterwards he takes his girlfriend out to the fair, and he's about to tell her that he's a Darkman now when, completely unrelated, they have a different mutant at this fair, and it's never addressed again. Then he has a go on this game, loses, and when the guy's like, oh sorry, try again. Oh, finally, some decent acting. Never mind. Anyway, his face melts, and she's like, it doesn't bother me, honest. So the mob kidnap her to lure out Liam, and they try to blow him up again, but properly this time. And then he puts like 10 masks on this guy to trick this other guy. Then he jumps out on him wearing a mask of the guy, which makes all the other men in masks pointless. Anyway, he has a fight on this helicopter, and they fly him all over town, and then the mob boss just starts acting like he's bored on Grand Theft Auto. Then he disguises himself as the drug lord again and goes to save his girlfriend from this business prick who planned the whole thing. And he's like, I know how Darkman thinks. Well, what if he tries disguising himself as one of us? Nah, he's already done that 8 times. He won't do it again. So he asks him a riddle he can't answer, and he figures out he's Darkman. Anyway, everything goes tits up, and then I realise Sam Raimi just used this entire scene again for Spider-Man 3. But instead of an alien made of goo, Darkman's got to fight this man that works out a bit. And then he grabs one of those doom guns that they build skyscrapers with. But little did this guy know that the more you take the piss out of how Darkman looks, the stronger he becomes. Anyway, he's like, you won't kill me, you pussy. And afterwards, she's like, you can still perfect the liquid skin and then we can be together again. And Liam's like, nah, I'm used to it now.